Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here today wearing several hats. I'm an SD61 parent, 13 years standing, and a child psychologist with years of experience working in school settings. I'm also a member of Greater Victoria Acting Together, or GVAT, a coalition of 33 local organizations, such as faith groups, NGOs, and trade unions, with 75,000 members in the Victoria area. Our families are deeply troubled by the cuts in the 21-22 district budget and support the trade unions in their efforts to protect the jobs of school staff. We advocate for primary prevention as a model for mental health programming in schools. Positions such as family liaison workers, who do crisis intervention and advocate for children and families in the community, are really vital for vulnerable students and are currently being cut in the budget. Such programs cost a nickel on the dollar in saving future health care costs and help ensure students meet their goals in life. GVAT supports the teaching of Indigenous languages and culture in public school settings. The research clearly shows that when Indigenous students have a strong sense of identity, feel welcome in school, and that they belong there, then they will stay and succeed. GVAT also opposes institutional racism. It is clear from the recent open letter from an Indigenous parent and the large number of co-signers, you should look, there are pages and pages, that as he states so clearly, colonialism, systemic racism, and patriarchy are very serious current issues in the district. We view the cuts to staff, such as child and youth family counselors, educational assistants, and music teachers, just to name a few, as highly detrimental to student well-being. The loss of these staff now is particularly critical given the impact of the pandemic on students' mental health and their higher levels of anxiety due to COVID. Having access to counseling staff can save students' lives in preventing suicides and opioid deaths, especially when these problems are increasing due to the pandemic. Because of the funding model, cuts in these important roles are not readily visible in the budget. Currently, 4 of these critical positions are being eliminated, and about 300 students will lose access to a counselor in the coming school year if this budget passes. We are especially concerned about the more vulnerable students returning to school to find that some of the reassuring and familiar faces of staff they have come to know and trust are gone. In regard to the cuts to 5th through 8th grade music programs, music teachers are clear that the critical age for mastering initial instruments ends at 10. Once this key window is passed, the lost learning cannot simply be made up later. Brain development is not something you can just ignore when convenient. Music programs also offer a great opportunity for students to challenge themselves, make new friends, and feel valued and welcomed by staff, as well as parents enjoying seeing their children at recitals, I have to add. How do you explain to a 10-year-old why his older siblings got a music program, but he won't? Or to a struggling 2nd grader who will no longer get help from a reading recovery teacher in order to become a successful reader? This is another key developmental moment that can easily be lost, with serious consequences for a student's future studies and self-esteem. Provincial funding is currently dependent on the previous year's district headcount. This approach is clearly flawed, and we support going back to a more reliable funding basis. There are also substantial funds being drained from provincial public education by sending tax dollars to private schools on a per-student basis. This policy of the previous government needs to be reversed as soon as possible in order to fully fund our public schools. Despite some recent increases, BC school funding is still well below many other provinces per student. GVAT advocates for using all the funds that are currently available, such as the $3 million in interest sitting unused in the district's bank account. We also question the cutting of over $4 million in much-needed student programs due to the so-called structural deficit, which we see as essentially an accounting issue. And when you ask accountants, they look at it and they say, "I've never seen anything like that. What the hell are they talking about?" We ask that the district take more time to explore the structural deficit question, ideally with input from the province, and in the meantime, we want to see all the funding restored now. I understand that even the trustees have not been able to see detailed line item budget items prior to the budget vote, not only this year, but for the last two. Whatever the outcome of the vote on Monday, parent concerns about the administration's flimsy reasoning for these proposed cuts is not over. Many parents are pledging not to vote for school board members who back the cuts, and we believe the trustees need to remember who hired them. P.S. It was not the superintendent. Every student deserves to be seen as an individual and to receive the help they need to succeed in school. Each child only gets one childhood, and we're only just beginning to understand the significant impact living through COVID will have on our children and youth. Thank you.